Thank you for joining us for this episode of Comply on the Fly with M3 and Karen B. Comply on the Fly is your trusted weekly resource for reliable insight and quick answers on common employee benefits compliance questions. Please note, this podcast and the contents herein do not constitute legal advice. Seek the advice of counsel for any employee benefits compliance-related guidance or strategy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen B. And the Comply on the Fly question of the week is, do I need to do anything about air ambulance reporting? Well, this will be yet another Comply on the Fly episode regarding another transparency requirement, air ambulance data. Just a bit of background on this one. The Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021 contained many transparency requirements to address surprise billing, or in other words, large unanticipated medical bills. One of these requirements is the Air Ambulance Data Collection, or AADC, that seeks to collect information on air ambulance services, such as medical transportation by helicopter or plane, that often results in large surprise bills. This data collection requirement is intended to give lawmakers and regulators a better understanding of the cost of air ambulance services and the factors driving those costs. A proposed rule on this data collection was issued, which originally set a deadline of March 31st, 2023 for the data collection for 2022. This rule provided information regarding the data that must be reported, but never set out how or where to report the data. As such, CMS, which stands for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, announced recently that data reporting will not be required until a final rule is published. So we can forget about the original March 31st, 2023 deadline. However, while we wait for the final rule, you may want to familiarize yourself with the requirements. There are many pieces of data that CMS will be looking for in this reporting, including the following: the identification of the group health plan, the plan sponsor, and if fully insured, the issuer, market type of the plan, whether it's individual or group, dates of service of air ambulance services, billing national provider identifier numbers, or NPIs, the CPT and HCPCS codes associated with these services, transport information including aircraft type, the miles traveled, pickup and drop-off zip codes, and identification of the facility to where individuals are transported, contract identification between the provider and the plan, claims adjudication information, and claims payment information, of course, all in relation to air ambulance services. That is a lot of information, and of course, information that you might not readily have available as the plan sponsor. So, who is responsible for air ambulance data collection reporting? Well, it will depend on whether you sponsor a fully insured health plan or a self-funded health plan. For those of you that sponsor a fully insured health plan, you may enter into a written agreement with the health insurance carrier or issuer to submit the required reporting on your behalf. This written agreement will shift liability for failing to submit from the plan sponsor, you, to the insurance carrier. However, if you sponsor a self-funded health plan, you are free to enter into an agreement with the third-party administrator, or TPA, to submit the required reports. However, you cannot shift the liability for submitting reports to the TPA, which means you are ultimately liable for any failure to submit the reporting. Therefore, once we have the final rule and know when, where, and how to submit the reports, it is important, if you sponsor a self-funded health plan, to verify what entity will be submitting the required reporting. And that is your Comply on the Fly question of the week. Thanks for tuning in.
What's on your mind? If you have a pressing compliance question, send it to askkarenb@m3ins.com. We'll do our best to cover it in an upcoming episode. You can now follow and subscribe to Comply on the Fly on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. Make sure to tune in next week and encourage others to join us.